EJ, I want to start with you. You're our resident quarterback here. Avery is getting all the pub, but you think the other quarterback is the guy we're sleeping on a little bit here. Why?
Zubin, the big reason is the consistency that you notice from Rocco Beck when you turn on his tape. Now, he's not going to wow you with the height, weight measurables. He's not 6'4", he's not 245 pounds. But he's a guy who's 6'1", he's 220 maybe, 215 pounds. He's tough as hell. And for me, when I watch quarterbacks, who makes the right decision? Who's going to get the offense set up in the right spot? Who's going to be able to ad-lib when it calls for it? And he's sneaky athletic too. So again, I think when you watch a lot of these quarterbacks, everybody wants to look at the guy who can run around and make the play with their legs. But Rocco Beck is somebody who I would be confident to know he's going to make the right decision. He's going to go with the right spot with the football. And ultimately, he's going to give you a chance to win at the end of the day. And I'll add this too. You bring in two new receivers from the transfer portal, Chris Sowell and Xavier Townsend, two guys who actually match the former receivers that are now in the NFL as far as height, weight, and size. Sowell's about 6'4", and then Xavier Townsend's about 5'11", so to kind of match Higgins and Noel. And I think, again, this is an offense that's going to really take off here in 2025 because of the leadership for Rocco Beck.
Yeah, on the Kansas State side, I look more at two positions, defensive line and also safety. Rocco Beck, 25 passing touchdowns, 8 rushing touchdowns, so he's a dual-threat quarterback. But if you have two new receivers, you may be leaning more on the run. And so I'm focusing on defensive tackle Damian Ilalio, 6'2", 300. He's a nose tackle. He does a great job of stuffing up the middle so that teams can't run the ball. But if you do stop the run defensively, Kansas State needs a little bit more help on the safety side of the ball. Think about it. They just added Gunnar Maldonado, who's a transfer from Arizona. He was injured last year, but in the time that he played, he was dominant on the football field. And so if you can stop the run with those 3 down linemen up front and then have that new transfer safety, Maldonado, it can slow down what Rocco Beck does and his efficiency as a quarterback.
A lot of great points. When you're looking to handicap this game, key number 3, Kansas State's your favorite. That's what I do. I'd lay the points here. I don't like the matchup for Iowa State. I think you got a lot laid out that was very smart from E.J. Manuel about the loss of the top 2 wide receivers. Not just top 2 wide receivers, 2,000-yard receivers who are now in the NFL, but we didn't mention the loss of the team's top 2 offensive linemen. If Iowa State tries to run the ball in this game, they're going to run right into the strength of the Kansas State defense, which is stopping the run. The other way around, Chris Kleiman, the head coach at Kansas State, 5-0 straight up, 4-1 against the spread in Week 1 games since he showed up at Kansas State. Now, that excludes COVID Week 1 because that game's a bit of an outlier for everybody that was involved. But if Kleiman can get off to a hot start here, if that Kansas State run defense can do what we expect them to do against Iowa State's offensive line, and if Rocco Beck struggles to throw the football here without his top 2 wide receivers, which keep in mind, 12 of 35 in this game last year, 12 of 35, I like Kansas State to cover the number.
So, Joe, I just wanted to add, my only pause to Kansas State is when you watch Avery Johnson. Again, he's super athletic, and I think that's why everybody was excited to have him as a starter. Again, Will Howard had to more or less leave to go to Ohio State, and he won a championship. But at times where he sees blitzes or when there's 4 off a specific edge, it almost seems like it surprises him, and then he ends up throwing the ball in the dirt. He's not really prepared, at least last season, for some of the pressures that Iowa State may bring toward him. So that's my only push right there. Potentially, I would think maybe Iowa State plus the points. But, again, I'm not a betting expert, so I'll stay in my lane, Joe.
No, fair points and great points. One thing I would look for when it comes to Johnson, his ability to make plays with his legs. When they throw out his rushing prop for this game, expect him to run early and often against that defense for exactly the reasons EJ just laid out. Yeah, he is a true dual threat guy, no doubt about it, but maybe hasn't met the expectations, the heavy expectations that have been put upon him. Speaking of a team with heavy expectations, each of the last 2 years, the only double-digit win teams in the SEC, believe it or not, are Georgia, Ole Miss, and Missouri. But they've got a quarterback issue. Bo Pribula came over from Penn State in a rather controversial transfer during the playoffs. Sam Horn was drafted in the 4th round by the Dodgers, so he's waiting to see a little bit where his future might lie, whether it's under center or maybe in the outfield. Sam, let's begin with you. Normally, on a week where we've seen so many teams pick their starters, it's a little bit of an outlier that Missouri hasn't done so, but you're kind of saying maybe it's not the worst thing in the world to still be in a deadlock at this moment.
Yeah, not even close, especially when you have an athletic dual-threat quarterback like Bo Pribula. In practice, oftentimes, you're not allowed to touch the quarterback. And so things that you might think might be a sack or maybe a 60-yard run, you have no idea what it is. But in an actual game where there's a true opponent that has ill intent, you'll be able to see if Bo Pribula is providing you that second level of offense on a broken play that he did back back at Penn State, or if it's going to be Sam Horn, who's been the incumbent, been there for 3 years. He was injured last season, who's going to be able to push the ball down the field. So I actually love the fact that there's a competition right now, as long as that competition doesn't go 3-4 games into the season like we saw with Ohio State a few years back. I think early competition is good in this scenario.
Well, look, Coach Drinkwitz is using this as a preseason game, guys. And in college, we don't have a preseason. We don't have that luxury. But the luxury for Mizzou is they play Central Arkansas. So it's not like they have a huge non-conference game in week 1 or they play an SEC opponent coming out. And you want to see these players perform under pressure. You want to see them have an interception and how do they respond the next drive. You want to see them come off the sideline and how do they communicate with the offensive coordinator? How do they communicate with their offensive line? All those small things that really matter when the rubber starts to meet the road throughout the season. So in fact, I think this is a great thing that Coach Drinkwitz is doing. Is really giving these guys the opportunity to prove it in a game, not in a scrimmage, not in a 7-on-7 where things are sometimes, there's base coverages. Anybody can do that. I can go out there and bang a slant right now, boys. But the key here, you get them in a game, let them get ruffled up a little bit. Who's going to respond the best and ultimately lead this team?
Yeah, they played Central Arkansas week 1, but they got Kansas in week 2, and Jalen Daniels coming back for might be year 7 or year 8. I'm not sure what year it is for him, but Jalen Daniels is going to be coming with a vengeance. He was injured last year, that Kansas quarterback who led his team a couple years ago to a 6-0 season before injury. So you better get this figured out by game 2. I understand preseason August 28th, I get it, but by week 2 versus Kansas is going to be a huge litmus test for this Missouri Tigers football team. We talk about the 10 wins. You're excited about that. But look at some of their losses last year. I think it was at A&M they lost, was it 45-10? Alabama 31-0, something to that effect. Those 2 losses, they were lost 75-10 was their overall score. So yes, some of the easier games you're not worried about with Missouri, but when they face Alabama and A&M again, you might have some question marks if you don't have things figured out.
You think Texas, for a variety of reasons, might go wire to wire here. Why do you say that?
Well, it's 2 things when you think about championship pedigree football teams. Can you run the football and can you stop the run? And for Texas, they really have 3 to 4 running backs that all could be day 1 starters, but Q Wisner will probably take the lead, even though a couple guys like Baxter and Blue got hurt. But I think also when you look at the front 7 for Texas, I mean, you talk about Anthony Hill Jr. and Colin Simmons and some of the interior defensive linemen that they have. And that's going to be the best part about Texas's team, on top of having a young Arch Manning. So, look, I'm not saying that Arch is going to be average, but what I'm saying is he's not going to be asked to do a ton, especially early in the season. He's going to have to lead. He's going to have to be good on 3rd down. He's going to have to make good decisions. But if you have a defense, guys, that can say, hey, look, if you score 24 points, we got a 90% chance to win. That's a really good feeling for a quarterback. That takes a little bit of that pressure from Arch. So that's my expectation. Stop the run, be able to run the football for Texas, and that usually leads to a championship.
Yeah, and if I'm Texas, I'm not overly concerned about Ohio State. And why do I say that? The reason why is that Texas played this team in the college football playoff. They got a chance not to shut down, but at least to slow down tremendously Jeremiah Smith. They've seen it before. Michael Taft, who's also a preseason All-American, is still going to be back there at safety, number 1. Number 2, the playmakers in that Ohio State game, when Ohio State played Texas, Jack Sawyer, who had the sack at the end of the game to seal the game, Travion Henderson, who had that big touchdown run on the screen to help really open up the game. Those guys are gone now. Those main playmakers who made the plays the last time you saw these guys are now in the NFL. I understand that Jeremiah Smith is still a top player, as is Caleb Downs, who had a huge play in that game as well. But Texas has talent. They've been there before. They've seen this team before, and they're returning so much on the defensive side of the ball. I think they'll be ready for what Ohio State has to offer.
And EJ, to you, give me a little something quarterback to quarterback here. On the other quarterback in this game, at least Manning's thrown a handful of passes, saying even less than that in a huge spot to basically begin his career. What does he need to focus on?
Well, the focus is going to be making good decisions. In a ball game like this, especially at home, you want to keep your fan base in it. You also want to feed guys like Jeremiah Smith, who I believe is the best player in the country, Cardinal Tate at receiver, Brandon Ennis. I'm sure they're going to have a slew of running backs to feed the ball off too. But early in this game, don't feel like you have to make the big post throw. Don't feel like you got to force, a follow route on, or even a basic route across the middle in a 3rd and 6 situation. Play the game out. Like the first half, take some of that pressure off yourself and not feel like you got to win the game in the first 30 minutes because it's a 60-minute ball game. So, again, the biggest key for inexperienced guys is taking what the defense gives you and allow the game to come to you. And when you get chances to make big plays, you got to hit on them.
And you got to understand that Pete Kwiatkowski, the defensive coordinator of Texas, he knows the same thing. He knows that Julian Sayin is inexperienced. So I understand that last season they played a lot of safe coverage versus Ohio State, but I wouldn't be afraid to pressure Julian Sayin early on obvious pass downs to see if he's really got the stuff that everyone says that he has if I'm Texas's defense.
Yeah.
You want this, you got that. No way, watch him walk right past you. Wrong